Hello, and welcome to another episode of Breaking the Guard. We just had a UFC Fight Night, Henry Cejudo versus Song, and it was a great fight card. Actually, all the prelim fights went to finishes, mostly knockouts, couple submissions. Even on the main card, good amount of knockouts and submissions. The the worst fight, honestly, was the main event, right? And again, spoiler alert here if you haven't watched it yet. Uh, Henry Cejudo ended up losing due to a doctor stoppage because he suffered severe eye poke, and then it went to the scorecards. And I'm not sure what the scorecards revealed, but it was a very weird situation, and it just brings about the topic of how do you deal with these fouls, because it seems in any UFC card, we're going to see at least one eye gouge. And even in this one, I can recall two eye gouges happening in separate fights. So it is a really big problem. And in this case, for example, Henry, I had him going into the third round, one apiece. I thought Song won the first round. I thought Henry took the second round. At the end, he popped him with a good cross that bloodied Song's nose, and then he had opened up a cut under his eye. So although I think the punch stats showed that Song landed more, it seemed to me damage-wise that Henry was landing more damaging shots. Although Henry also has a fairly good chin, so he did eat shot, but he didn't seem any worse for the wear. Whereas Song, the damage was very visible. But that was my take. I think I was surprised because I was seeing like on X, people are like putting, oh, everyone was saying it was 2 rounds to none. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm the one that's not seeing what they're seeing. But I thought Henry had won the second round. Third round, I'm trying to remember now because I've kind of forgotten a little bit about it. I think Song was probably winning that round, if I can remember correctly. But then I think the round started actually with a nut shot from Song that Henry recovered from pretty quickly. And then with about a minute 13 left, he got eye gouged. And it was a bad one because it was a double eye gouge. Hand reached like this, fingers splayed out. So he got both eyes, but it was particularly uh, Henry's left eye that got really jabbed in, like finger inside the eyelid. And they stopped it. And Henry did what rarely any fighter does, which is he used up all 5 minutes. And the ref, as usual, is trying to speed up the process. Uh, but Henry was complaining about the eye significantly. He, at one point, sat down and kind of played to the crowd, which is a weird move. And I think when he did that, a lot of people thought he was just milking it for rest time. I don't think he needed to rest. If anything, I think it was going to work against him because Song was going to be even fresher. Uh, it's hard to say because what ended up happening after the 5 minutes were up, he resumed the fight, but very, very different, right? He was basically running away, quite literally, from Song, who was pursuing him like a rabid dog. And it looked like Henry could not see what was coming at him because he was just frantic, moving around, wasn't throwing any counter punches. And in between the third and fourth round, he just kept telling his corner, "I can't see anything. I'm seeing blurry. I can't see the punches. Call the doctor in." And hers was it Herzog? I'm not sure if that was a ref or it was another one, but they made a weird move because I've seen them stop fights in between rounds. But he said that they had to start the fourth round so then he can call the fight, and then it would go to the scorecards. So it's a weird, like, why would you do it that way? It didn't seem to make any sense. I don't know if they would have stopped it in the third, it wouldn't go to the scorecards and it become a no contest. And that would seem to have favored Henry because by all standards, he was going to be losing. On my card, it would have been 2-1. I think on many people's cards, it was 3-0. So, kind of a weird move by the referee there, but he ended up losing on the scorecards after they did that. Now, I see a lot of people hating on Henry, saying, "Oh, he was trying to cheat. He thought he was winning the round so that he was going to get an easy win." I'm like, I'm not sure if that was the case. I'm not sure if he was faking. Now, I can tell you, most people that I see writing in the comments have never suffered an eye injury. Because you'll see people like, oh, it takes like a minute and then you're back to normal. Like, no, it definitely does not. Right? I have seen some pretty egregious eye gouges. I've had the misfortune of having many fighters with shitty opponents that eye gouged them. One of them got DQ'd because he blatantly eye gouged my fighter twice, and the second time the referee DQ'd him justly, and it was actually from the guy was eye gouging my fighter from bottom out and just literally looking with his thumb for the eye. It was just very blatant. And similar types of injuries I've had over the years with fighters, and it's always blatant. Right? I feel like eye gouging, accidental, does it happen? Yes, but very rarely. Uh, I think for the most part, people are cheating. And that's what really gets me upset about this because it's like admissible cheating. Let me explain something. We're fighting, striking on our feet. I can't think of a valid reason, a legal valid reason, for me to have my hands splayed like this. Right? This does not really help me in any way. And I'm actually using energy because my relaxed hand is going to be closed like this. There's no eye gouge here. I have to stretch out my fingers. My extensors have to extend, and I have to keep tension for this to work. Right? So this is not an accidental motion. This is stretched. Same thing with this here, right? Now you can make a little bit more of a case, oh, I'm trying to push. And I think that is more of the accidental area where, I am like trying to push somebody and then the fingers curl in a little bit and they catch you there. But this one is definitely cheater, 100%. You're trying to eye gouge somebody, right? This one, a little bit of a gray area. Although, for my sake, if I'm striking, my hands are usually here, relaxed. And then obviously when I go to strike, I close the fist. But here, I'm in a position where I can parry and catch, right, with either hand. And I'm not wasting energy by flexing my hand closed or stretching my hand open. But what was interesting when Song restarted the round after the eye gouge, he was right away like this, hands stretched out, fingers open, and putting a lot of pressure. And I was like, what the hell, dude? Like, normally the ref gives you a stern warning, hey, keep the hands closed, right? And he was just like this the whole time, moving forward. It was like, it's like he was trying to threaten that he was going to eye gouge again. It's a very weird move, right? It doesn't hold a lot of strategic advantage to be with your hands out like this unless I'm trying to eye gouge you, right? Or if I'm constantly trying to push you, which is normally not the case, right? And it's easy for me to make the adjustment with like a relaxed hand to push. There's no need to be hands splayed out constantly. That is a very weird stance. So that's why to me, this is kind of like a cheater move, right? Where I'm moving at somebody like this, like it's like I'm trying to get an accidental eye gouge. It shouldn't be happening as often as it does. And you'll often find that fighters that get into these eye gouges usually have multiple fights where they get eye gouges. There you go. John Jones is the classic one, right? This to me is a cheater tactic. So there needs to be harsher penalties on this because otherwise, if you're getting a free pass every time you do it, and you're making it seem like, this happens all the time. Like, no, it's not supposed to happen all the time. I can't recall a time that I've eye gouged somebody, right? And look, Grappling, where we don't even have to worry about striking, right? But we do have lots of pushing and wrestling, right? Which means there's a lot more reaching involved. And when you reach, you tend to have an open hand because I'm not trying to punch you now. I'm trying to grab the back of your head, trying to grab your wrist, or I'm trying to post on your shoulder. I can't recall a time in my grappling career where I had to stop a match because I got eye gouged or my opponent got eye gouged. I can't recall in the tournament I've been in ACC where that's happened either. And I've spectated now the past 2017, 2019, 2022, and 2024. So like the past four I've been at person. Can't recall one time someone got eye gouged in hundreds of matches in each tournament. So if eye gouging was something that happened easily by accident, we would be seeing it more in graphic. Oh, did eye gouge? We have to stop, the match, and then like we'd have a penalty time. Like it's not even in the discussion, right? Like it just doesn't happen. But in MMA, where we're striking, right, which means closed fist, it's happening all the time. My opinion's BS. People are cheating. Either you have bad technique and don't know how to fight properly, or you're trying to cheat. No, you're not trying, you are cheating. I think it's the latter. People are cheating, right? They know they can get away with it, and they're going to try to. Just like the groin kicks, right? It's another one. And just to hammer in, because the eye ones are the worst ones in my opinion, because they can have lasting impact on a person's career. There's a lot of people that don't get to ever see the same again in their life. I know a couple of them that they're essentially blind out of one eye because from people eye gouging. It's totally unfair. You could cut a career short there. Not to mention you're affecting someone's health outside of the cage long term. So I feel like this is something that I'm not sure what the right answer to it is in regards to eye gouging, but just to say a few things. It's not a few minutes and you're okay. Like if you had a severe eye gouge, 5 minutes is not going to do it, right? 10 minutes is not going to do it. You're going to need a few hours at best, and you might need to go to a doctor and get stuff checked out. I've talked about previously the scuba diving injury I had where I was seeing double, and I wasn't eye gouged. It was just a little vacuum that pulled my eye out of the socket pretty much. And I was seeing blurry for like 3 days, right? You could give me the 5 minutes ain't going to do crap for me, right? Like, and that's, in my opinion, not even as severe as like a real eye gouge, right? I have seen severe eye gouges in person, and this is one of the things that makes the Henry thing a little less believable, right? So I'm not going to totally throw a song under the bus here. Normally, eye injuries are extremely painful particularly when they're eye gouges, to the point that I have seen someone in training. He shot in on somebody. It was actually George Masvidal was when he was training with my brother and I back in the day. He shot in on my brother, and my brother's hand was on his hip, and his thumb was just happened to be sticking out. And George's face went, and basically my brother felt his whole thumb go inside of George's eye socket. And I didn't really see what happened. I was just on the outside, and I was behind my brother, so I couldn't really see it. But the reaction was terrible because George rolled to his back immediately, started spasming, and then threw up all over the place. And my brother was freaking out, I guess he was like a 20-year-old, and he was like, he was looking at his thumb because he felt like the penetration, right? And I was like, what the hell is going on? And then my brother's like, my thumb went all the way in his eye. And George took a few minutes to be able to just get him out of that state because he was just in spasm, right? That was probably the worst one I've seen in person. Again, you could give George 2 hours and he was not going to be okay, right? Like we had to take him to the hospital. Fortunately, he was able to be cleared, and obviously he's had a great career since. But that type of injury, you're not bouncing back one. And that one just happened to be like a rare fluke, like accidental case, like where my brother's hand just happened to be jammed into his hip, right? Uh, but we don't usually see that, thank God, because that's a terrible. I can tell you, those are excruciatingly painful. But I've had, like I said, most of the time when you see it happen, it's like a poke versus someone ramming their head into your thumb. And those pokes are very painful. And with Henry, we didn't really see him in any pain on the eye gouge. He just went right into saying he couldn't see. It was very blurry, right? Uh, so that's a little bit unusual because normally the pain is severe when it's a hard eye gouge. But in any case, I mean, I'm not an expert. I just have some personal and anecdotal experience. So, but if he did suffer eye damage and he was very blurry, it would be hard to recover from that. Like it doesn't just go away, right? It's like 5 minutes is not really going to do it. So all the 5 minutes is doing was if you had like one of like a minor poke where like it just like like okay, like your eyelid kind of inverted or whatever, and like okay, I gotta get that sorted, do this type of thing. Like if you had an eyelash stuck in there, like 5 minutes will get that out. But anything else is not really doing much for it. Like you're gonna be fighting with like not full capacity of eyesight, which is pretty terrifying when you when you're fighting and you have somebody who's a really good striker, like Song was. So the idea that you can just bounce back from in 5 minutes is not true. If it's a real eye injury, it's not going to really make much of a difference, to be honest. The best thing you're going to get out of it is get your wind back if you're retired. But other than that, if again, like I said, there's obviously a gradient of how severe the eye pokes are. Sometimes it's just like this, and you're like you have a few like moments, and then you're good. But if it's a real jab of the eye, you're not bouncing back that quick, right? So it was clear that Henry wanted out of this fight. That's for certain, right? Now, was it because he knew he couldn't fight anymore and that he was going to lose this fight? Or was it because, like people are saying, he was trying to cheat his way out of it and he was hoping to win on the scorecards because in his head he was winning? That I couldn't tell you. And he did do some gamesmanship, which was weird when he was playing to the crowd. But again, he's kind of a cringy guy, so it's not off-brand for him. I think that kind of rubbed people the wrong way. Like he's like, oh, he's like playing this, and then he pretty much quits the fight after that. It's not a great look optically, right? But it doesn't mean that he was faking it either. I don't think. Well, I would hope that he wouldn't fake his way out of a fight. It's possible. I can't fully discount it. Wrestlers are dirty, and he is a wrestler. But it's believable to me that this is what happened, right? But it's clear that he wanted out of there because he was trying to get his corner to throw in the towel and call the fight, and the corners weren't like really listening to it. They were being the type of corners like, oh, you get back out there, you're gonna find a way to win, right? But he I call the doctor in because when you say that as a fighter, you know they're gonna stop the fight. If you say I can't see, it's over. So he clearly wanted out of the fight, that's for certain. But if he wanted out of the fight because he knew he could not intelligently defend himself, it makes sense. Look, he's 38, right? If he suffers a severe knockout or gets even more damaged, he is totally shot, right? And could have some long-term consequences. But this is kind of the problem I feel with Henry and his career trajectory, which I talked about on Friday on the news, which is he took such a layoff because I feel like he made the same miscalculation as Fedor's management did with his career. that he took a few years off thinking that he was going to be able to get more money and ended up not getting any more money, and then comes back and now has suffered 3 losses in a row. He lost the aura, he lost the mystique, and he probably lost a lot of the fire, right? Uh, because normally a fighter does not want to walk away from a fight, right? Even when he knows the cards are stacked against him, you're still gonna step in, right? Like you're in there to the death, right? And you'll find any way to win despite the odds. When you have the mentality where like, oh, I'm not doing well here, I don't like this, I need to get out of here. It's not a good recipe for the mentality of a fighter because you have quit in you now. And like I said, it's understandable. It's actually very reasonable, but we don't want a reasonable fighter. We want a fighter that believes in the impossible. So, in my opinion, this kind of puts the nail in the coffin, right? Like your quitability is higher here, even though you were wronged and cheated. Yeah, but like the fact that you were able to walk away from this, want to walk away from this, is not a good sign from the mentality. Talent wise, he looked good. You know, like I said, I thought he won one of the rounds. Uh, he didn't seem to commit to any of the takedowns. I don't know if he was waiting into the later rounds or not, but it wasn't looking like at the current fight trajectory that it was going to work out for him. Looked like Song was able to outpoint him and was going to continue to do so for the most part. Excuse me. And that he wasn't going to be able to close the gap and find the takedown. Um, yeah, because he would have to win the last 2 rounds, which, especially after the eye gouge, definitely wasn't going to happen. But I mean, what can we do about the eye gouging, right? I know, I think a grappler, Brandon Reed, if I'm not mistaken, he actually competes with little goggles, which is, or maybe he just trains with them. I don't know, but I've seen him wear the goggles before. They're like the swimming goggles, right? And I don't know if he has some type of vision issue or whatnot. But that's not entirely terrible for grappling. It pretty much works because you don't really have to worry about impact too much. And normally you're not jamming your eyes into someone's, body or face, so you don't have to worry about that. But with MMA, there is a problem there, of course, because we're punching and kicking and kneeing. So then we have to wonder about the integrity of like how well are those goggles going to hold up. I mean, we've seen cups get crushed. Imagine if the goggles got broken and then a shard of that goes in your eye, right? So I guess there would have to be some engineering involved to make sure that these things wouldn't break. And then I guess targeting is also not going to be an issue because if you're the opponent, I mean, the other thing you have to consider too is that if I punch hard the goggle, the frame is going to dent in. Uh, and since it's going to be technically a thinner area because it's just a rim versus a whole fist, the pressure is going to be significantly higher. So even that might be enough to cause the cuts more frequently now because it's going to push the whole rim around sharply and probably towards one side. If I hit the right eye or their left eye, it's going to like bevel a little bit. So yeah, I know people have teased that. I've thought of that too. But while I think for grappling, it doesn't really pose a problem, for MMA, I think it would, right? Like we would have to find a way to be able to, one, ensure that the goggle wouldn't break, two, that you could disperse the pressure so that it wouldn't cause cuts in itself or any other type of damage. I think the bigger thing really is just really de-incentivizing fighting with your hands splayed out. To me, like I said, it's a cheater tactic, man. Like you shouldn't be out there with your hands like this. Like this is, I'm trying to eye gouge you, right? Like have an open fit, like you have your relaxed hand. That's generally what you're supposed to be doing when you're fighting. This leaves it easy to close. I'm not wasting energy because I'm not either I'm not in flexion or in extension. I'm just relaxed where my hands want to be. I can catch, I can parry here. And, if I need to push, I can open up and push. If I need to close, I can close. So I think that minimizes a lot of the potential because, like I said, it's more understandable to me when someone is trying to stop a takedown and an eye gouge happens, because that's more like I'm doing this type of thing, versus the striking situation, which is I'm punching but my hands are open, right? Which, if I recall, that's what Song ended up doing. He kind of open-handed jabbed Henry and, got the double eye gouge. That to me should be a DQable offense, right? At the very minimum, lost a point because you took an illegal action. I jabbed at my opponent with my hands open, right? Different than an opponent is shooting into me and I'm trying to push him away, right? That's excusable. Okay, he was trying to, post on the shoulder and, this guy's head went into the path, or he miscalculated and he managed to get the eye, right? So I think that's a tricky area. I understand that, but we do have camera replays and there's people watching off to the side. So I imagine this could be investigated and figured out, right? But if these penalties are not harsh, people are just going to keep doing it, right? And even with like groin shots, like people dismiss those. Those are also not easy to come back from. Probably the worst groin shot I've ever suffered, I was down on the floor for 30 minutes. Couldn't get up. I remember because I was throwing a roundhouse kick. My brother was throwing a step side kick in sparring. And his step side kick just caught both of my nuts. Just poof, heel right in. Dropped me like a sack of potatoes. And at first, I was just grimacing in pain. And he started to laugh afterwards. And I got really upset. And I tried to get up and I couldn't. I got to my knees and I felt my hips completely just shut down, and I just rolled back to my side, and I was like fetal for like a good 10 minutes. Then I was able to get up to my knees, but I still couldn't stand. And it took about, like I said, 30 minutes before I was able to get back on my feet, and I was done sparring. Like I couldn't do anything after that. So groin shots can be just as debilitating. And I've been on both sides of this. I had it where I remember I was sparring this guy who was a good boxer. And I was just starting in MMA. It must have been like maybe a year. And this guy was piecing me up on the feet. And I threw an inside leg kick that obviously went too high, caught him and clipped him. Not particularly bad, just clipped him. And he needed like a couple minutes. And I was like, fuck, man, I'm sorry. And after the couple minutes, we restarted. And then I started beating him. And I was like running all over him. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, oh my God, the nut shot. Like, it just took his legs out. And, he was man enough to keep fighting, But even like a groin shot that wasn't severe was enough to ruin his fight capacity where he had an obvious winning edge on me, now swing completely the other way. So these types of fouls, even if they give you the 5 minutes, it's not enough, right? Like if they did the damage, the damage is already done. So like you're not getting it back, right? Like you're not always going to be able to recover. I know for some people that's hard to understand, and that's because you've never suffered the injury. That would be like saying, oh, boom, I split you open. Oh, give him 5 minutes, he'll be okay. Like, no, he's split open already. Like he's not coming back from that. Now, like he has to deal with this cut. Right? It's like that accidental clash of heads, right? Like you can't, 5 minutes and he's good. Even though you can't see it, the damage is the same if it's an eye gouge or if it's a nut shot, right? Like it's there. You can't undo it. The 5 minutes is not going to be enough. So we need the actions, the penalties to be more punitive, in my opinion. Like it needs to be like minus point, right? And maybe there's a case for even accidental to be a minus point right from the get-go. Because the thing is, like, unfortunately, fighters are not honorable. So we can't really gauge like how bad of a nut shot was this or how bad of an eye gouge was this. Like you can't really see it from the outside. The only person that can tell you is the guy who has all the incentive to lie, right? So it's hard to know whether this is a warning or this is a penalty or this is a DQ, right? Like it's really hard to say. To me, anything that's done blatantly should be instant DQ, right? So that's why, like, I'm saying if I'm jabbing people with my hands like this, like, and I gouge somebody, DQ, right? The pushing, that's like a different thing. It shouldn't be that common to happen though, right? Like it really shouldn't be that common. I think it's more cheating than anything, if I'm being honest. You don't see like training injuries all the time where people are getting eye gouged every day, right? Uh, it, but like I said, every UFC card, there's going to be at least one guy getting eye gouged. That doesn't make sense. It really, really doesn't make sense. So I don't know. That's my take on it. Like I said, I have good amount of experience because I've had multiple fighters who have suffered serious eye injuries from very dirty opponents, and a couple of them got away with it, and it's really aggravating. And like I said, some guys they never get to see the same again. It's messed up, but it's kind of like we've created a system where you can foul a couple times without penalty, so the guys who are dirty will, right? And I don't think spectators understand that, right? Like these guys are willing to do whatever it takes to win, and cheating is not beyond them because to them it's only cheating if they get caught. So we need to make sure that those type of people don't survive in this sport, right? They either reform and play clean or they get the hell out. Because if we can't fight honorably, then you shouldn't be fighting me. Because I'm fighting at a handicap now. Because I'm fighting within the rules and you're going to fight outside of them.